Forget everything you've ever been taught about free speech in America. It's all a lie. There can be no free speech for the citizenry when the government speaks in the language of force. What's the language of force? Militarized police, riot squads, camouflage gear, black uniforms, armored vehicles, mass arrests, pepper spray, tear gas, batons, strip searches, surveillance cameras, bulletproof vests, drones, lethal weapons, less than lethal weapons unleashed with deadly force such as rubber bullets, water cannons, stun grenades, arrests of journalists, crowd control tactics, intimidation tactics, brutality. This is not the language of freedom. This is not even the language of law and order. Unfortunately, this is how the government at all levels, federal, state, and local, now responds to those who choose to exercise their First Amendment right to peacefully assemble in public and challenge the status quo. Recently, this militarized exercise and intimidation reared its ugly head in the college town of Charlottesville, Virginia, where protesters who took to the streets to peacefully express their disapproval of a planned KKK rally were held at bay by lines of gun-wielding riot police. Only after a motley crew of Klansmen who had been safely escorted to and from the rally by Black Guard police did the assembled army of city, county, and state police declare the public gathering unlawful, and proceeded to unleash canisters of tear gas on the few remaining protesters to force them to disperse. To be clear, this is the treatment being meted out to protesters across the political spectrum. The police state does not discriminate. As a USA Today article notes, and I'm quoting, "People demanding justice, demanding accountability, or demanding basic human rights without resorting to violence should not be greeted with machine guns and tanks. Peaceful protest is democracy in action. It is a forum for those who feel disempowered or disenfranchised. Protesters should not have to face intimidation by weapons of war." Militarized response to protesters poses a danger to all those involved, protesters and police alike. In fact, militarization makes police more likely to turn to violence to solve problems. You want to turn a peaceful protest into a riot? Bring in the militarized police with their guns and black uniforms and war zone tactics and comply or die mindset. Ratchet up the tension across the board. Take what should be a healthy exercise in constitutional principles, free speech, assembly, and protest, and turn it into a lesson in authoritarianism. Frankly, any police officer who tells you that he needs tanks, SWAT teams, and pepper spray to do his job shouldn't be a police officer in a constitutional republic. All that stuff in the First Amendment sounds great in theory. However, it amounts to little more than a hill of beans if you have to exercise those freedoms while facing down an army of police equipped with deadly weapons. It doesn't have to be this way. There are other far better models to follow. For instance, back in 2011, the St. Louis police opted to employ a passive response to Occupy St. Louis activists. First, police gave the protesters nearly 36 hours notice to clear the area, as opposed to 20 to 60 minutes notice other cities gave. Then, as journalist Brad Hicks reports, when the police finally showed up, they didn't show up in riot gear and helmets. They showed up in shirt sleeves with their faces showing. They not only didn't show up with SWAT team gear, they showed up with no unusual weapons at all, and what weapons they had, all securely holstered. They politely helped everybody who was willing to remove their property from the park to do so. All the cops who weren't busy transporting and processing the voluntary arrestees lined up, blocking the stairs down into the plaza. They stood shoulder to shoulder. They kept calm and silent. They positioned the weapons on their belts out of sight. They crossed their hands low in front of them in exactly the least provocative posture known to man. And they peacefully, silently, respectfully occupied the plaza. In other words, these police officers acted like the citizens they were and not like combat soldiers. Indeed, as Forbes magazine concluded, and I'm quoting, "This is a more humane, less costly, and ultimately more productive way to handle a protest." This is great proof that police can do it in the old-fashioned way. using their brains and common sense instead of tanks, SWAT teams, and pepper spray, and have better results. Folks, it can be done. Police will not voluntarily give up their gadgets, war toys, and combat tactics, however. Their training and inclination towards authoritarianism has become too ingrained. Remember, all government agents, police or otherwise, work for us, the people. They might not like hearing that. They certainly won't like being reminded of it, but we pay their salaries. Either we, the people, believe in free speech or we don't. Either we live in a constitutional republic or a police state. We have rights. As Justice William O. Douglas advised in his dissent in Colton versus Kentucky, and I'm quoting, "We need not stay docile and quiet in the face of authority. The Constitution does not require Americans to be servile or even civil to government officials, ladies and gentlemen. Neither does the Constitution require obedience, although it does insist on nonviolence. This emphasis on nonviolence goes both ways. Somehow, the government keeps overlooking this important element in the equation. There's nothing safe or secure or free about exercising your rights with a rifle pointed at you. The police officer, who has been trained to shoot first and ask questions later, oftentimes based solely on their highly subjective feeling of being threatened, is just as much of a danger, if not more, as any violence that might erupt from a protest rally. Compliance is no guarantee of safety. Then again, if we just cower before government agents and meekly obey, we may find ourselves following in the footsteps of those nations that eventually fell to tyranny. The alternative involves standing up and speaking truth to power. Jesus Christ walked that road. So did Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and countless other freedom fighters whose actions changed the course of history. Indeed, had Christ merely complied with the Roman police state, there would have been no crucifixion and no Christian religion. Had Gandhi meekly fallen in line with the British Empire's dictates and rules and laws, the Indian people would never have won their independence. And had Martin Luther King Jr. obeyed the laws of his day, there would have been no civil rights movement. And if the Founding Fathers had marched in lockstep with the royal decrees, there would have been no American Revolution. We must adopt a different mindset and follow a different path if we are to alter the outcome of these interactions with police. One thing's for certain, the government is prepared in the event that we the people mobilize and mount an effort to restore freedom. That's why you see militarized police in every community. That's why you see the government listening and recording everything you see and do on social media, your cell phone, your laptop, or what you say or do when you walk down the street. Their cameras are always watching. That's why the government, by way of the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government, is conducting threat assessments on every home in America to see if and when you might be a troublemaker. Why do you think the government, by way of the local police, is carrying out over 80,000 SWAT team raids a year where heavily armed stormtroopers crash through the doors of citizens' homes in the middle of the night? And the number is growing. Believe it or not, some 200,000 federal employees dress and act like SWAT team agents while being armed with hollow point bullets that expand on contact and will blow your head off. Children across the country are being taught to be docile, meek citizens. Did you know that in 1 year alone, over 200,000 students in America are locked up using straps, bungee cords, and duffel bags, which school authorities refer to as therapy bags? All the while, the Constitution is no longer taught in any meaningful way in American schools. The lesson, step out of line in the American police state and you will get annihilated. There's more. It was recently discovered that the Pentagon is predicting that the country will break down by 2030 and the military, along with your militarized local police, will have to impose martial law. This is by way of a training video. So what does the future look like? It certainly doesn't look very good, does it? What can you do? Get active at the local level and take your government back. Establish civil liberties oversight committees that will have the authority to correct local police when they conduct SWAT team raids where innocent people are killed and even pets. You really can't complain about government if you're not taking part in it. Make sure you're at those city council meetings when your so-called government representatives, I say so-called, are making decisions that affect your livelihood, your property, and your taxes. The American dream was built on the idea that no one is above the law, that our rights are inalienable and cannot be taken away from us, and that our government and its appointed agents exist to serve us. It may be that things have gone too far to save this country, but we still must try.